son, where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast, and we're back. We're back again, and we're joined by David Gashaw. Resounding. Oh, hang on, wait again. There we go. Yeah, all right. Resounding round of applause. All right, great. Finally got that sound effect working. How you doing, bub? We haven't done one of these in a while. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back. Excited to be here as always.
We've been talking about doing. I'm stoked. We've been talking about doing this for a fucking while, so I'm glad we're finally getting to it. And you know what? My content has been kind of free of Nazis. So
yeah.
I think it's important that we get back to a little bit of history that is of vital importance. So we've covered a few things, you and I, on this, like subjects were kind of relating to this. Mm-hmm. But did you know anything about the Ratlines before we had talked about doing something on them?
Just vaguely conversations that you and I have had in the past, but nothing. I mean, I'm definitely more well-versed now than I was before. But, you know, I knew about it a little bit and knew the general gist of it. But as you and I were discussing before we came on, there's still just so much. I've done a few hours of research in the past week. And then this morning I was listening to that 2.5 hour episode that you sent me.
The podcast?
Yeah, I didn't even finish all of it. But
yeah, that one's really dense.
But yeah, because as all this stuff is after a while your eyes can just kind of glaze over and you're just like, there's so much.
Well, it's a lot of names and it's a lot of like specific dates and times. Like each of them have their own convoluted path of getting out. And then of course, like some of this shit goes on for decades, like the hunt for these guys.
Oh, sure.
It's a lot. The U.S. government, the Mossad, all these different people expending a lot of money and resources trying to track these people down. So I guess let's just start from the very beginning. It's the end of World War II.
Yeah, May 8th, 1945. In fact, is it's when the Germans the Nazis officially surrender to the Allies.
Now, when you think of like the end of the war, what is like the biggest battle or biggest moment that made national news right around this time?
That's an excellent question. A lot of that you see, when I was a kid growing up in high school growing through school, a lot of the stuff we never touched.
Yeah, they never bring this up. Exactly.
Yeah, so this is all stuff that I learn, that we all learn outside,
on our own.
Doing stuff like this. Yeah, on our own. So when I went through high school, it was mainly just World War II was, there was this really bad guy, Hitler. The years were this to this thing called the Holocaust. Good. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
That was basically it. So I don't really know what comes to mind for you.
So I would say this is kind of in there's this weird time toward the end of the war. Hitler's not dead. Nazis haven't given up yet. But a lot of the top scientists, they know it's over.
Yeah.
Like when we were doing Operation Paperclip, a lot of the stuff on Wernher von Braun, he was playing months before he was captured. He was already kind of working how he was going to parlay himself into American hands and end up in a favorable position. Not in the Russian hands, but in American hands where he knew he would be utilized by the military. So like a lot of people, when they think of the war, I guess maybe they think of, Hitler's death or, I don't know what like a specific battle or moment in Germany. I'm sure there is, but where it's like the Nazis are done, the Allies take over, or the Soviets take over. But this is in that weird zone where a lot of this stuff goes into effect. And like they were crafty little fuckers.
Oh, sure.
All of these guys utilize kind of different arms of a much larger tentacled animal that they created to escape. And there's a slightly comical but rather informative show called Hunting Hitler, and I'm going to I'm going to bring that up here just so you can. It was a History Channel show in the vein of Ancient Aliens. It was still pretty good. They talk about a lot of things, a lot of actual fact that I never learned in school. And, it's honestly shocking that it was even on the fucking History Channel. But anyways, that show goes into a bit more detail about how, like, there was a plan for getting U-boats out of Europe through the Atlantic Ocean into South America. And to some extent, but definitely toward the end, they wanted to get away from Europe. Like right before Germany is completely folded, a lot of them escape by way of underground tunnel or underground railroad style networks of people getting them into Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, like just elsewhere in Europe, getting them away from Germany. But then at some point when the war is really done and they realize the target's going to be shifted to them, then they try and expedite their chase out of Europe and into South America. They had made a lot of really close allies with fascist dictators in South America. The Nazi ideology was strong well before, like all during the war. And they had forged those relationships in part as an exit strategy. Some of them got on commercial boats with assumed identities. There was an actual fair amount of them that were trying to utilize U-boats to get out there, but very few made it. One actually famously sunk in a little bay somewhere in South America. But anyways, the point of what I'm saying here is that there for every type of military officer, there was an exit strategy. The Air Force had a number of exit strategies. The top brass of the SS were whichever one they were closest to, was the one that they were supposed to utilize. It was a lot. That was a whole thing within itself. Just the infrastructure that they created to get out of Europe by themselves. Beyond that, ultimately, which I'm sure we'll get into more detail, they had a lot of help from the Vatican. They had a lot of help from supposedly the Red Cross. There's a couple of organizations that agreed with enough of the Nazi fascist ideology to be willing to help straight up the worst war criminals escape. So that's, I guess, that's kind of like the broad picture about where we are, where we start talking about all this, and kind of like at least the longer form documentaries, like the one that I shared you and a couple other ones we'll bring up here. Speaking of which, before I get too deep, where is that one? The audio podcast is this. War Stories with Mark Felton. It is dense, but it is very detailed. And then this was another one that I was actually enjoying, and I was watching again just before the broadcast. But it was on a TV show, I guess, but it's mostly about Mengele, but they talk about Eichmann and a couple of the other big celebrities that made it down to South America. So, yeah. Anyways, that is the situation. That's like kind of the little bit of background. And Dave, what did you feel about all this? Where did you start? Where did it start to get really interesting for you?
Well, I got some notes here. Kind of like piggybacking off what you said, researching some of this, some of these ratlines and networks that plans they started establishing as early as 1942. So yeah, they had a kind of a leg up on the situation, and plus a lot of it, kind of like what you said, was using stuff like, staying with this priest's cousin's sister, somewhere like up in the Swiss Alps or whatever. Just get them away from there as fast as you can. Kind of using networks all the way down to just little things like that. They'd go to a town and whisper, "Hey, I'm with so and so looking for whoever." Then they'd pass them on down until they were safe in these little tucked away villages. And a lot of them obviously did make it down to South America. Some of the numbers here I found were, 500 to 1,000 of them went to Chile, 2,000 went to Brazil, and
Jesus Christ.
5,000 of them went to Argentina.
Oh my God, dude.
So,
I knew those numbers were high, but I had no idea they were that high. That is crazy.
So yeah, almost upwards of almost 10,000, and that's just in South America alone. Again, just that we know about.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, there were primarily two ways to get there. Through Spain, and then hopping on a boat over to South America, or you would go to Italy. I think you would stop in Genoa, and then Rome,
yep.
Hook up with the Vatican, our boys, and then get you on down to South America. But there was also one I was reading about the Finnish Ratlines.
Hey Dave, if you've got something pulled up on your screen, I think you can share the screen.
Oh, okay. So, I'm actually sitting in front of two computers, so yeah. But
well then,
yeah, I've got I'm doing this on my laptop. Yeah,
nice.
And then sitting in front of my desktop, but so there was even ones that went through Finland as well. So
yeah. So
I'm sure there were other routes that you could go through. Those were just
no, definitely, and those are absolutely they touch base on those paths. Do you have me? Mm-hmm. Oh, geez, I got you.
Yep.
You got me? Okay, cool. Okay.
Yep.
So basically, I think there might be a delay. That might be what's going on. All right, hang on a second here. What about now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So the one thing I was kind of shocked about Hunting Hitler is they talk about this, and one of the episodes they really kind of get down the path of implying maybe the Nazis were making nuclear material. And the reason that they say that is because there's one Nazi holdout or stronghold in Norway. Nazi stronghold making heavy water in Norway, Oslo. Yeah, so let me see if I can find pictures of this place. There was this water power plant, and there's the way that they create hydroelectricity. One of the things that it creates is this thing called heavy water, and I think it's like extra ionized water, or water with an extra whatever molecule. Anyways, it's required in the creation of nuclear material. So there was a stronghold in Norway, and it's not like Norwegians weren't not. They were pretty fascist. Like all the Scandinavian countries were pretty fucking fascist because the whole Aryan myth that they were trying to propagate, played into the superiority of their race on a cultural level. So they were pretty sympathetic with it, but toward the end of the war, they obviously see that they have to kind of change their opinions, but there were still pockets of these, like literally Nazi bases all around that area, and this was one of them. And there's, an idea that maybe they were producing heavy water and they were shipping that heavy water to Argentina. And let me see if I can find this. This is the facility right here in Norway. So go hydro plant. And they were supposedly making heavy water there. So the next question is, let me see if I can find a picture of the
just such a weird name for something. Heavy water.
I know. Well, it's got like an extra proton or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. But
it makes sense, but it's also it's an awesome little phrase, heavy water.
Yeah. I just think of like some clear, like gel sludge.
Kinda, yeah. Let me see if I can. Yeah, and they supposedly go to this place in Hunting Hitler, but there's like the remnants of what looked like larger facility in South America. In this like strange place, and there's this house that's also nearby that some Nazi sympathizer, like former Nazi person, lived in, like powerful scientist or really important scientist. So there is an idea that they were like not only advancing that agenda, but maybe they were getting really, really close. And maybe we didn't even beat them, kind of thing. We beat them before they could use it. We got there and took all that and were developing it or used it to finish developing ours. But Dr. Richter's Nuclear Research Island. Here we go. I'm still blown away that it was 10,000. I knew that number was high, but I had no fucking idea it was that high. That's crazy. And that makes total sense. Like, I did an episode with my buddy Dakota where we talk about Colonia Dignidad, which is the Bavarian village in the middle of the fucking Amazon. And that was where a lot of them, many of them ended up. And they had like, that itself was like a little torture camp. They turned that little Bavarian village into a torture camp. But there's this island, and there's this scientist, Ronald Richter, who would have been the guy who the Nazis had on developing nuclear shit. Again, this is all supposed. None of this has been proven, but they can put Dr. Richter down there in this house that was nearby this island, and there's this facility there that was, it was definitely built. They were definitely doing something there. But again, like the Argentinian government was completely fascist leaning. Here's some pictures of that. Here's the island. Here's Dr. Richter. So it's not like they escaped. I guess what I'm saying is it's not like they escaped to Argentina and made a happy life there. They were there. The whole war, they were there. They were doing shit. And they could easily escape to South America because they had already established themselves very comfortably there. And maybe you can speak a little bit more on this, but there's a lot of these motherfuckers that lived very comfortable lives in South America.
Oh, sure.
Had families, did the whole thing.
Yeah, there's like, because at the time, the guy in charge down there, Juan Perón, I believe the president is what they have in Argentina. He, he was the one that kind of took all these on. And let's see here, some of my notes. He was very contradictory. Some of the things they would, he helped organize the Ratlines to bring the Nazis to Argentina as well. Yet at the same time would turn around and like hire Jewish people to, fill parts in the government as well. So he was, just contradictory, speak out of both sides of his mouth. But, he was the guy that, kind of helped bring them all there because it was said that he admired the militarization and organization of the Hitler regime. So
he wanted his military to be like that.
Sympathize with them. And there's one in my research I learned about this town called Villa General Belgrano, which is located in the Sierra Mountains of Cordoba. And it's about the population is about 6,000 people. Oh my
God, dude.
And they have like the biggest Oktoberfest in the entire world, because that's, that's where all these Nazis, places like that, and a lot of the people who live there are of German descent, obviously. So
yeah, I wonder, is this the same place where Bavarian Village is?
I don't know. It could be.
La Cumbrecita, Colonia Dignidad.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful looking little town too.
We'd have to look at a map, but yeah, dude, this is the case. Like literally thriving German communities in the middle of the Amazon jungle.
And they do it. And in the video, they said they do it all. They do beer, they do sausages. They do the whole 9 yards, sauerkraut, and everything. And I believe it was said that in 1947, a town 125 kilometers north of there is where one of the famous Hitler sightings in 1947. So that was
interesting.
125 kilometers north in a place called La Falda, which I thought was interesting. So, and I believe in the video I saw, La Falda, Cordoba. Yeah, can't really.
Yeah, there's not too many pictures of that, but yeah, I really I wish there is a supposed picture. I'm on the CIA's website, and there's a thing about
nice
hideout in Argentina. Yeah, I mean this is like heavy documentation, and I guess this kind of brings up another point too, is that I've read and seen in many places that post World War II, Americans were following Nazis, and they knew where a lot of them were. They just weren't doing anything, and they also weren't telling Mossad. And I think that what the implication there is that we took a bunch of Nazis during Paperclip, and we didn't want to run the risk of killing somebody because, I mean, plain and simple truth is, like, America didn't hurt the same way that Israel hurt after World War II. Israel hurt a whole different way than America hurt. And America just kind of moved on, and Israel couldn't. You know, Israel had much more trauma to deal with, and you know, much more shit to deal with in terms of establishing themselves as a country at that time. So it was just one of those things where I feel like the Americans knew that it would have pissed them off if we had told them we had a bunch of them. But because we knew where some others were, maybe we were just trying to hedge our bets and be like, well, maybe we do want some of that science in the future, so let's not kill them, but let's at least keep tabs on them.
Sure.
And, you know, there's tales of all branches of military intelligence, like, having reports and being aware that there are Nazi sympathizers, Nazi collaborators, and actual Nazis all over South America. But again, not telling Mossad. And even when Mossad starts to aggressively hunt them, they ask for help from other countries, but very few countries are willing to even help them. So they go on this, like, pretty hardcore crusade of just snatching them. But this is a famous picture. This is supposedly Hitler in the Eden Hotel in La Falda. Mm-hmm. And this would have been, like, after he had died.
Sure.
And I remember there being one more that they showed in Hunting Hitler. I was hoping they would have it on here, but maybe they don't. But yeah, you know, before the war ended, he definitely could have been there.
Sure.
You know, just gone there to visit one of the many operations they had brewing down there. They were literally, like, in the same way that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are trying to colonize Mars so they have an exit strategy planet. This is on a smaller scale what the Nazis were doing. They wanted an exit strategy continent. Mm-hmm. And Argentina was that exit strategy continent. And they lived a pretty comfortable life there. I cannot stress that these people lived a very comfortable existence after doing what they did. And in many cases just moved here and continued doing it.
Yeah.
Like Colonia Dignidad. I won't go too deep into this, but this is, you know, this torture camp these Nazis set up, but it was basically a training camp for Nazi officers to train Juan Perón's intelligence service on how to interrogate and torture, and, like, that's what this whole place was. That's the purpose that it served. It was like built like a mini concentration camp, which is just really strange. But Juan Perón allowed it because he's like, well, you're training my people in, like, the highest order of, you know, military intelligence.
Sure.
So, I don't know. It's just very fucked. But there's a lot of craziness around South America. Every time I think, like, even just you telling me the numbers, every time I think I've read or seen enough to be like, oh, okay, I get an idea for the scope. I don't. The numbers that you said are way bigger, and now it makes more sense. Like, why there are still thriving. They had enough people to move there and have kids to keep the towns populated.
Yeah.
That's not 10, 20 people. That's hundreds. That's a couple thousand people.
Sure.
Well,
and of course, those are even the ones that we just know about, the ones that we don't, and the places that we don't know about either. Doing research about this, it kind of made me think, did you ever see that movie or read the book Apt Pupil by Stephen King?
Oh, dude, of course. Yeah, of course.
And it kind of makes you wonder, like, I don't know. I'm sure everyone had some old guy down the street, when they were growing up, and how many times was that, a Nazi in hiding?
Well, this, I don't know if Apt Pupil is based off of this, but this Netflix documentary.
Oh, sure,
The
yeah.
Devil Next Door. This is about one supposed prison guard in Germany. That was particularly heinous, that escaped to America, and they fucking caught him. They brought him back.
That was in Cleveland, I believe.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it kind of makes you wonder how many of those are running around in, every little small town in America,
I mean, with that many getting to South America, and we know many did get to America, and I mean, like, the most sinister ones are the ones they give a shit about. That guy, right. The Devil Next Door documentary guy, he was bad, but he's not fucking Joseph Mengele.
Sure.
He's not like these like horrendous, sinister fucks that that escape, but he still gets caught. I'm sure all throughout Europe, Germany, Switzerland, Scandinavia, Italy, there's all sorts. Because even in Europe, dude, it's like you hear people with crazy, all sorts of accents. There's crazy diversity. You're not thinking in America, you might be like, oh, this guy's German. In Europe, you're less likely to be awed by that because you just see more people and you hear more people who are German. So, who knows? I'm sure a lot of them just didn't even have to go that far, and they just lived a life where they were constantly looking over their shoulder. But
sure, well, because there's bound to be, and even kind of like what you said, and even the toughest concentration camps and whatnot, there had to be someone who was just the lowest on the totem pole there, but was part of the crew. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and in many cases, at least from what I can tell of the people that I know that were caught, a lot of the people that get caught are pretty low level in comparison. Like the really sinister fuckers either got very comfortable lives in America or very comfortable lives in South America. Sure.
Well, even Joseph Mengele, he lived in South America. Like he died in like 1979.
Yep.
So obviously lived pretty much the rest of his life. And I doubt he was, doubt it was too rough. Although he did drown though. So
he did, but he was pretty old. And for a while he didn't immediately go. He was like one of the people that was trying to like live on the mountains for a while, but then the pressure got too much and he had to escape. But I mean, every time when I first would start reading about this and I'd hear about like random guy captured in South America and then another guy dies in South America, gets captured in South America, I don't think I even thought that there were more of them. I was like, wow, that one guy got away, But you read into this a little bit and you realize that no, they literally broke away and started a whole new civilization for themselves in the middle of the jungle, and very few of the people that should have. We at least America knew where they were. At least America, Russia probably did too, but at least America did. There's enough documentation and FBI documents to suggest that they were actively monitoring the fact that they just wanted to keep tabs on them, but it wasn't a priority for us we were now fighting the Russians. We'd already beat the Nazis. So it's like, those guys are in the jungle. They pose no threat to us. We don't have the same beef with them that Israel and the Jews do. So it's kind of callous. And that simple relationship actually, that like defined a lot of discourse between America and Israel forever. Like even up to now, like there was this kind of Israel's like, the fuck, dude, they hit us with the Holocaust. You're not going to fucking help us hunt these motherfuckers down. They killed a bunch of your people too, and America's just like, no, we're Russians.
Yeah,
Nazis don't pose us a threat anymore. The Russians are the bigger threat to us now. So and Israel never got over that.
As we discussed in the Project Paperclip episode, keeping tabs on them was more of just to, go with what you're saying is, maybe we'll take some for ourselves, but, just keep an eye on these people. That way we make sure the Russians don't get them. Yeah, no,
that's exactly my point. Just make sure that they don't go, especially the really sinister fucks. Let's make sure they don't get into the Russians' hands. But the ironic part there is that all the Russians, even for Operation Paperclip, the scientists that Russia took, they didn't get nice lives. They got worked to exhaustion and then booted back penniless to Germany. Yeah. So, and I mean, whatever. They may have had their network still in Germany, but they didn't get a cush new life and a nice fucking salary at an American business or government agency. No,
they didn't get a 401k.
Yeah.
But one thing, that we talked about briefly at the beginning of the episode was the involvement of obviously the Catholic Church. But one thing, as I was looking into it, that kind of threw me for a loop was the Red Cross involvement with all this. Because I don't know about you, but just like a lot of people, when I think of Red Cross, I just think just like donating blood, at the church every couple months or whatever, and just out doing good stuff like
that. A pretty wholesome organization. Yeah.
Sure. I had no idea that there was this side of it or that they were involved in it. But they were.
They sure were. And again, a lot of people really glaze over the Catholics' involvement, but you have to understand something about the Catholic Church. And it's that they have a fair amount in common with the Nazis. Right. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, Russia would have fucking destroyed the Vatican.
Sure.
Communists do not like church, or at least we're not as forgiving of church as the fascists were. Mm-hmm. And, the Catholics had a particular opinion that they shared with the Nazis, if you get what I'm saying.
They weren't too upset with what they were doing.
They thought they were doing the Lord's work by helping these Nazis escape. And that's, again, there's like heavy documentation of that.
Sure.
But, I think that's like, when you think of how do you get this many people out, you have to have like multiple large organizations helping, including all the infrastructure that we talked about within the military to get high-ranking people out and for people to have means of escape. But,
and
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and plus having the, it sounded like, having the Catholic Church on their side wasn't a bad, wasn't a bad card to play because, as we mentioned, a lot of those Nazis escaped under fake aliases, fake names, fake paperwork, employment histories, and stuff like that. And when it came to people, a lot of that was facilitated through the Catholic Church, particularly the Alois Hudal bishop. And when it came, time for like the Red Cross, hey, lost all my papers in the war, here's my new papers trying to get to South America. And, places like the Red Cross would just be like, oh, well, if this this bishop vouched for you, then that's good enough for me, kind of thing, and just let them on in without ever doing their due diligence and cross-referencing stuff. And that's how one of the reasons that some of them got away so easily is because no one just looked twice. They were just like, yeah, sure, okay.
And two, I'm looking at, this is the Ratlines World War II Wikipedia page. Under Hudal's paragraph, and it says Hudal used this position to aid the escape of wanted Nazi war criminals, including Franz Stengel, commanding officer of Treblinka, Gustav Wagner, commanding officer of Sobibor, Alois Brunner, responsible for the Drancy internment camp near Paris and in charge of deportations in Slovakia to German concentration camps, Erich Pribke, who was responsible for the Adriatin massacre, and Adolf Eichmann. Pribke, Eichmann, Brunner, Stengel, and Wagner are those are some of the biggest fucking names. Like on the list of people that we did not want escaping Germany and we wanted to either kill or capture, those motherfuckers were on it, and he helped all of them. That's what I'm saying is like there's no way that he didn't know what he was doing.
Oh sure,
like these, and some of these names, not necessarily the internment or concentration camp commanding officers, but Eichmann, dude, that guy's face was on international newspapers. You know what I mean? Like this, this was not I don't know. And like that many prominent, high-ranking Nazi officials, I have a hard time believing he was like ignorant to the fact. And being like, oh, you lost your papers? Yeah, no problem. Here's a new passport. Get to South America,
Well, especially
it was probably more like, oh, yeah, here's the new papers I made you. Now get on this boat at this time. Here's the money to pay for it. Get the fuck out of here.
Right. Yeah, don't speak unless spoken to. Yeah, I was trying to find that quote that Bishop Hudal had. The way he worded how he helped the Nazis just kind of, talk about passing the buck and just.
Here we go. In his memoirs, Hudal said of his actions, I thank God that he allowed me to visit and comfort many victims in their prisons and concentration camps, and to help them escape with false identity papers.
Yeah. Well, what was the one he was like, really all I was trying to do, I'm just paraphrasing, but he's like, really all I was trying to do was just give people with a real bad name a new shot at life. Just glazed over it like that, that easily. We'll find it here, but
the Allies' war against Germany was not a crusade, but the rivalry of economic complexes for whose victory they had been fighting. This so-called business used catchwords like democracy, race, religious liberty, and Christianity as a bait for the masses. All these experiences were the reason why I felt duty-bound after 1945 to devote my whole charitable work mainly to former National Socialists and Fascists, especially to so-called war criminals.
Yeah.
So he for sure knew.
Yeah.
He was deliberately doing that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Well, it's some pretty dirty business, Dave. It's some pretty dirty business.
Well, especially with Adolf Eichmann, what was he? He was the one that put in the what they call it, like the final plan.
The
what was the term for it?
Oh, the final solution?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, if anyone comes up with the name of something like that, I mean, I'm asking some questions. What do you mean by this final solution?
Yeah, we would have to read all in here. What was his title? Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. So following this, he was tasked by SS Obergruppenführer Reinhard Heydrich with facilitating and managing the logistics involved in the mass deportation of millions of Jews to Nazi ghettos and Nazi extermination camps across German-occupied Europe. He was captured and detained by the Allies in 1945, but escaped and eventually settled in Argentina. My favorite part about him is that he was working at a fucking Mercedes plant. Like, go figure. He moves to Argentina and gets a job at a Mercedes plant. Fucker.
Got to move around in style.
Yeah, he was he was one of the major organizers of the Holocaust. Yeah. Yeah, dude, he's, again, like, that's toppity top. Mm-hmm. There's like names that everyone, this guy's face was all over international news. This is before the internet. People only read newspapers, and his face was all over international newspapers. There's
everyone knew those eyes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's no fucking way that, and we just saw there by that quote from that fucking priest, like, that sums it up. Anyone who says they didn't know, they for sure knew, and they were probably just a Nazi sympathizer or, whatever, contractually obligated because of some business dealing or something.
Well, and I feel like, to just playing devil's advocate, even if that guy genuinely didn't know, I feel like at that time, you could take those guys out of their uniforms and whatnot and dress them in like civilian clothes. But I feel like those guys probably had a certain look and walk and talk about them that would just be dead giveaways anyways.
Well,
you would think so.
Eichmann's interesting, and I'm pretty sure he's the guy. So when you got into the SS, you had to get a tattoo. And that tattoo had your blood type and maybe some other like super important information where if you were unconscious but alive and they found you, they would know, and you needed blood, they would know what blood to give you or if you had any type of whatever. He said no, he didn't want that tattoo. So there's one point at which he's about to get caught, but he doesn't have that tattoo, so they let him go. Because if you were an SS officer, you're supposed to have that tattoo. A lot of these guys also had like battle scars on their face. And this was a thing that they got from fighting, fence style fighting, but with actual blades. And they would do it as Hitler Youth or young and officer training. And it was like a bragging right to have this huge fucking scar on your face that you got from this fight. And it was such a thing that like you would get one while fighting and then you would put mud and dirt in it to like ensure that it would turn into a scar. So you could be like, yeah, I've got the most badass scar.
Right.
But it was only for like, at least toward the depth of World War II, it was like a almost kind of badge of honor, like to have the scar on your face. So yeah, these guys were instantly recognizable. This is from Indiana Jones, but that the scar is in there. The scar is in there for a specific reason, and it was like they would do these fencing style battles, and they would get these scars, and for a while it was one of those things in Nazi society where it was like, oh, excuse me, sir, let me hold the door for you. If you saw a badge of distinction. But after the war, it was a dead giveaway. That like you were in the SS, you probably had some officer information that could be forced out by electrocuting your balls or something. I often think like what it must have been like, and also like these people, they thought they were right. Here's the thing about war. Both sides think they're right. So these guys think they're right. And they go out into the world and maybe they pretend that they don't feel that way to blend in or be like, oh no, I was a baker. I wasn't in the military. I escaped Germany before the war started.
Right.
But deep down, they're not really mad about what they did. They don't lose any sleep over it. They're mad they lost. And I don't know, it's just like an interesting thing to think that there were so many of them just like hiding in the shadows, just fucking waiting for a moment.
There's always that kind of, side of the coin or the argument that, did they actually lose the war? Did they just,
we've talked about that quite a bit in here. Yeah.
Yeah. About how they just kind of, some people, the rest of the world looks at it as like taking the loss, but in reality, through backroom discussions are just kind of like, yeah, sure. We'll stop what we're doing, and then, be able to escape to Argentina, or South America or whatnot, and kind of let everyone think that we, lost and you guys did your thing. But, all the while still kind of operate in some networks to this day.
Yeah, I mean, it really is crazy. Again, going over the lists of people, it's like I've seen it in chunks of 10, maybe 100, but 10,000.
Sure. Well, and a lot of those
10,000.
Well, and you think most of those people are dead or knocking at death's door already.
Sure.
But the old saying goes, but the idea won't die. And those people have children, and who's to say?
Well, bro, yeah, exactly. Even in Hunting Hitler, when they're first getting to Argentina and kind of exploring the towns, there's people with like German memorabilia of all kinds, like proudly displayed. They go to the supposed child of, I think maybe it was Mengele or somebody else, and he's proud of his father. Mm-hmm. It's his father.
Yeah.
And if all he is surrounded is by people who left Germany, who were pro-German, and he's in the middle of the jungle,
and they're singing his praises all the time.
Right. He only knows fucking pro-German. My dad was a good man. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. They have kids. The idea lives on. The idea continues. To infect, and I don't know. It's just really funny. I really did appreciate when, this basically after the war, like we were talking about before, Israel kind of asks a lot of people's assistance in hunting on the Nazis, but no one really gave a shit enough to help them. So they start doing it themselves. And this guy, Simon Wiesenthal, is basically like the OG Nazi hunter. In fact, when you search Nazi hunter on Wikipedia, his picture literally comes up.
Yeah,
but
just
basically, he was in charge of this program to kind of track down and bring to trial a bunch of escaped Nazis, and they got a few. But again, you said 10,000. This is 10. They captured 10.
Sure.
10,000 got out,
Right. Yeah, I was looking at when you look at the Ratlines Wikipedia page, and at the bottom, it says like notable ones who were caught or whatever. I counted, and they list 24, but yeah, like you said, that's out of 10,000.
Yeah.
So, that's
dude,
barely scratching the surface.
Fucking Jesus Christ. Yeah, Klaus Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
These are like the worst of the worst. Gustav Wenger, Franz Stengel, the guys you were talking about before, Pripke. So they never catch Mengele because he dies in the water, but he was responsible for identifying his remains. Mm-hmm. And then Eichmann and what's the really ugly looking guy that never got caught? Jesus Christ, hang on a second.
Some of these, and I like some of the nicknames that these people have, and you just know they're not messing around. Like, there's two of them here that are the Butcher of, and then they're respectful towns. They got the Angel of Death. And then there's one here, Gustav Wagner, called the Wolf.
Oh, geez. Der Volk. What is this goddamn guy's name? But yeah, those are some bad guys they caught, but they're really not the worst.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would have to. I don't want to fucking assemble a spreadsheet of Nazi officials, but I can't think of many that come to mind. But Bormann was another one that supposedly, you know, made it down to South America and had a whole family. Martin Bormann. What the fuck was that guy's name? Hang on a second.
I did find in some of my research that one of the reasons that the Germans and the Nazis chose Argentina is because it has similar climate and topography to Germany.
Oh, there you go.
Which I did not know or realize, but I thought, well, that's, you know, certainly important.
I mean, I don't even see how that's fucking possible. I guess if they were living up on the mountains closer to the equator,
sure,
kind of, sure.
Yeah, because I think of Germany as like having, I guess, all 4 seasons, you know, but particularly like maybe colder winters. But I don't know. I've never been there. But then I think of somewhere South America, Argentina, and I would think fairly, you know, warm all year round. But yeah, if they're up in the mountains, I could see that.
Yeah, you know, it's just fucking crazy that this, like, there's so much information. This has fucking been going on for decades, and it's just like we never learned anything about it. I don't know. It's very crazy to me.
Well, and similar to this, one thing I've been watching on Netflix recently is that docu-series Turning Point, about, you know, the war and everything like that. And I find the topic just interesting in general, but one of the things I'm enjoying about it more than anything is kind of like what I was saying at the top of the episode. A lot of that stuff I'd never learned at school, so it's all kind of brand new to me. But it's, you know, the whitewashing of our world history is...
It's pretty crazy, you know. I even with this shit, like, I've gone down this rabbit hole a few times, and every time I go down it, I learn more, I read more, I hear more than I didn't hear before. And what's interesting about this too is, like, with some things over time you hear more because people say more. A lot of the people that are involved in this are fucking dead. So no one's really saying anything. Mm-hmm. The only way we learn more about this shit is as more documents from back then become available through Freedom of Information, or just as time passes and shit gets declassified. That's where a lot of, like, the latest revelations of this shit, like the revelation that America was at least monitoring Nazi activity in South America. We were super aware. In fact, around that time, the 50s and the 60s, we were actively conducting coups in South America to overthrow certain people, so that we could, so that certain American business interests could personally gain, but also possibly in some way to subvert any Nazi influence that any of those South American individuals were trying to assume by rising up the ranks of another government, like in Argentina or Brazil or something like that. So we can't say they did nothing, but really their involvement was only insofar as if this isn't costing us any money, we don't want to do anything about it. If it might cost us money, then we'll see if we can clamp it down. But
sure.
You know, they weren't invested in the same way that Israel and the Jewish people were, for obvious reasons.
Right.
But the reason I was talking about Simon Wiesenthal is because you might know of this show called The Hunters on Amazon, starring Alphonse Pacino. And that's a very comedic and dramatized version of Simon Wiesenthal's story, but there's also a pretty good movie with Oscar Isaac where he plays one of the Mossad agents going to capture Eichmann in South America. It's just fucking nuts, dude. Like, they had a whole exit strategy. And it wasn't like, oh, we'll get to here and we'll figure it out. It's like, no, we'll get to our breakaway country located in the mountains of the jungle.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and well, isn't that kind of like the Nazi hunting? Isn't that basically it? I only saw it once, and it was when it first came out. But that movie, The Inglourious Bastards, isn't that basically the backstory of that?
It's not. They're not Nazi hunters. They were Nazi hunters, but they were pre-war ending in Germany and Europe, fighting the Nazis to take them down. They weren't hunting them per se, like this show. This show takes place in the 60s and 70s during the peak of when these guys were going around the world trying to find these motherfuckers that escaped and were living cush ass lives. But you know, that America cared about it then because we were at war, and you know, all of the business interests that were frothing at the mouth for us to go to war. There was an incentive for us to go there and spend that money and spend those lives, because they were a threat, and you know, we could stand to, you know, that's how our economy makes money, is going to war. And World War II was the first real taste of that. Like, life got really good after World War II. We had the baby boom, middle class was super big. Like, that's when that, you know, 1950s America was like the ideal scenario.
Right. Leave it to Beaver.
Yeah. And that was all on the backs of the money made during World War II. But, you know, it's pretty crazy. And, you know, we don't even really need to get into the business plot too much, but essentially the business plot is this thing that supposedly happened right around the time of World War II, where some particular business interests in America were going to try and install a banana republic, like overthrow the president and have one of their own fascist-leaning puppets in office. And like, the names that get implicated in it are hilarious. It's like, just, you know, all the big industrialists of that time, the Bush, Prescott Bush, like Granddaddy Bush. But I guess what I mean to say is, like, those were American interests in America, and they were the most outspoken. In Europe, it was like 50-50. In America, it was less likely to have bigger, important, prominent business people or politicians come out pro-fascist, even before America enters the war. But in Europe, it was like 50-50, including the British royal family, including every country in Europe. They were far more tolerant of the fascist ideology than America was. So again, like, if they had as much sway as they had to get into America and into South America, a lot of them probably took path of least resistance to maybe Africa, India, China, you know what I mean? Like, or even just in the surrounding countries in Europe.
Sure, yeah. Some of them probably didn't have to go very far. Some of them probably, kind of, as they say, walk down the end of the street, just stood there and then just let everyone walk past them. And then, that was that. You know what I mean? Didn't go very far.
And, just the general fog of war, especially like so many people, including civilians, died. Cities were leveled. Like, there's so much fog at the end of a war where even not very far from where you were, just be a new face with no documents and be like, I'm starting over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a simpler time.
Yeah. And they would be none the wiser. So I can't imagine what it's like. Yeah. Like having cities leveled and then on the tail end of a war and just, on day one, where do you pick back up and start? You know what I mean? So.
Well, some of them just made up new identities.
Right. Yeah.
Some people just made up whole new lives. It's just always, I've never not been able to think about, like, they didn't hate the Nazi ideology. They didn't quit being Nazis for moral reasons. They quit being Nazis because they didn't want to get fucking hung in the street.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's really strange.
Yeah, there's obviously some still out there. So
maybe there's one near you. And folks, if you find them, take them to your local law enforcement authority. Do not try and handle with them, even if they're like 90. Because if they're a 90-year-old Nazi, they're still a Nazi.
That's true. Yeah. Probably pretty cutthroat.
Yeah, at least cut face.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's such a weird thing to think about, you know, for anyone. Just, I don't know. In my hometown, was there a Nazi hiding out? Who knows?
Well, it's that. I mean, and leave it to Stephen King, but it's just like such a simple yet great idea. Like he's an old man. What threat does he pose until you find out he was a fucking Nazi? Well,
yeah. Well, I guess, and aside from like the scars and whatnot, it's some of the ones that didn't, you know, that just were just baby face, whatever people, and then, but it's crazy. Yeah, some of the, I don't know. I feel like it's a look that's burned into your face, you know, at least your eyes, and that's why some people can make them out, you know, 50 years down the road.
Sure.
When they, like, especially that guy, the devil next door, when there was, I think the person that found him out, or one of the people that went to testify against him in trial, was like, they're like, it was his eyes that were the dead giveaway.
Yeah, there were a few people from survivors from the concentration camp that were like, I'll recognize your eyes anywhere I go.
Yeah.
It's fucking, and he sure did try desperately. I don't know if you watched that documentary, but he's...
Yeah, I watched about half of it, and then I forget why I didn't watch the rest of it, but...
That guy was acting for his life.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was. And I know a guy, an older gentleman, I've worked with him before, and he was around in Cleveland. He was a kid when all that was going on, and he remembered it very vividly and was, you know, telling me about his experience when all that was going on. So...
What did his parents say to him? Like, as a kid, how was it explained to him?
You know, that's a good question. That I never asked him that. But I suppose the way he spoke of it, he was old enough to comprehend what was going on. You know, it's not like he was like 6 or 7, but you know. But I don't know. Maybe next time I'll ask him that.
Yeah, and you know, like we talked about, like, why didn't we learn any of this in school? And it becomes a little more simple for me to understand in the sense that they didn't want to teach us this shit in school because it doesn't make America look good.
No,
us entering the war after Pearl Harbor, that made us look good. Us helping them win the war, liberating the concentration camps, that made us look good. Us refusing to help track down all of the sinister fucks that should have been tracked down didn't make us look good. Also, taking all of their scientists and giving them comfortable lives in our country didn't make us look good. So that's why that shit didn't make it into the history books.
Sure.
But fortunately, for us, they still were documenting it and didn't shred the papers. Didn't shred all of them. So.
Yeah,
well, we did it, Dave. We talked about the Nazi Ratlines.
Another job well done.
We fucking did it. And as we're wrapping this up, is there anything else that we breezed over that we didn't get to go into more detail on?
You know, I've just been kind of glancing over my notes here. Not really. I mean, we touched on basically everything. Yeah. So, I mean, there was just like a couple different CIA organizations that, much like how we brought Werner von Braun over to help with NASA and whatnot, there was a couple organizations. One of them was like the Gehlen organization, which was kind of the same thing. We took some of these Nazi people. Reinhard Gehlen was the main guy, obviously the one it's named after, but mainly just were, you know, Nazis that we had on the ground over there. And as the quote goes, I believe were the eyes and ears of the CIA on the ground in the Soviet bloc, you know, so after the war, you know, just kind of like we touched on just keeping an eye on the Soviets and making sure that situation didn't get out of control.
Wow.
And then there's another one, Odessa, which is
Odessa. Yep.
Yeah, which some people say is like a myth, and aren't really sure about whether it's validity. But those are a couple other things I came across, which I thought were interesting. But mainly just intelligence services.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Odessa. How? Here's a question: how deep did you go on Odessa?
Not too deep, but it does sound like something that I would like to get into in my own free time, because it did sound interesting.
This does sound interesting. Maybe this is what we do the next one on.
Yeah, because what to see here.
Odessa is an American code name coined in 1946 to cover Nazi underground escape plans made at the end of World War II by a group of SS officers, with the aim of facilitating secret escape routes and any direct ensuing arrangements. Oh, so this is the actual logistics.
Sure.
Ratlines is just like the parent, blanket descriptor for the things that existed, the infrastructure that existed. This is one of the specific pieces. It might actually be good. I don't know if we'll get a full episode out of it, but
sure. I know
this would be interesting.
Yeah, because here it is, like Odessa as myth. Heinz Schneppen was examined an idea of Odessa as a myth or inflation of real circumstances, suggesting reasons why such a phenomenon became popular. Events both. So, yeah, all I know is along with it in popular culture, there's a movie starring John Voight in it.
Really?
What was it?
Right here, The Odessa File.
Yeah, that's it. So...
That's really funny.
The 1972 thriller. So, but yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it.
Wow. Well, sick. Dude, excellent fucking work.
Yeah.
I'm glad we finally were able to do this.
Sure.
On this one. And anything else you want to tell the people before we fucking wrap it up?
Not much. Same old stuff. Keep your stick on the ice.
Ha! I love that. That's a little hockey inspiration for you right there.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I love you, Dave. Stay on after. We'll chat for a second.
All right, we'll do.
Everybody, subscribe, share, join the Patreon. This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. We'll see you later.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva.
That's obnoxious.
Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva.
Literally no one cares.
For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.